We begin today the Gemara at the bottom of Kuf Tesam with Beis, 5 lines up from the bottom of the Yom. The Gemara here is discussing the halachas of Gezel Hager, which we'll have soon a Mishnah that will discuss this in detail. The point of the halacha of Gezel Hager is if a person stole from a ger, and now this ger died without anyone that will inherit him, so there's no one you could pay this back to. So the pasuk says you pay back what you stole to the kayin. I bring a carbon also. So because of the Gemara that brought this up, so the Gemara here is going to discuss a few different halachas about kachim. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in Abraise, minayin, lekayin, shaba, umakriv, karbonisa, b'choles, b'chol shah sheyirtzeh. How do we know a kayin that he's donating a carbon, so it's his carbon that he's bringing, so he can come and be makriv his carbon in the Beis HaMikdash at any time that he wishes. Talmud loyma, uba, b'chol avas nafshe v'sheiris. He can come whenever he desires, and he can serve and bring a carbon. Meaning, even though in the Beis HaMikdash they divided, there was mishmarais. Every mishmar, every group served for 1 week, and you didn't just, Kayan couldn't just come and bring carbon whenever he wanted. But if it's his own carbon, he can come and bring whenever he wishes. And from where do I know? That Aveda, meaning this refers to the actual animal itself, the meat of this animal that Aveda was done with, and then the hide of the animal belongs to him. That a man, it's his kachim, it refers here to the kayin that's bringing it, it belongs to him. So the Braisa continues and says, Ha Ketzad, what do I learn out from this? So why is the Braisa asking over here, Ha Ketzad? It's very simple. If it's his carbon, it belongs to him. So the Rishonim say, the fact that when a kayin brings his carbon, it belongs to him, there's another pasuk that already teaches that. So here this Braisa is going to say that there's an additional chiddush to say that it belongs to him. Im haya balmum, if this kain himself wants to bring his own carbon, he's donating a carbon, but he himself can't actually bring the carbon, do the aveda, because he's a balmum. Then he gives over the carbon to the kain in that mishmar working in that week to bring the carbon. But nevertheless, because he appointed this kain to be his shliach to bring the carbon, so the meat of this carbon, the hide of the animal, will still belong to him, and that's what the pasuk here means when it says "Ve'ishas kedosh lo yiyu." This is one gersa. There is another gersa though that Rashi brings, that this last part of the brayse, and l'chayr you're not going to ha ketzad either. That over here it's saying that in such a case where this kain bringing the carbon is a balmum, and he has to give it over to one of the kainim of the mishmar, then he doesn't keep it for himself. Then because they are bringing the carbon, they keep the meat and the hide of this animal. Or maybe this is a continuation of this braise. If this kain was old and he was sick, so in such a case, he gives the animal to any kain he wishes. He chooses a kain to who he wants that he should bring the carbon. But the aveda, meaning the meat of this carbon and the hide of this animal, will belong to the people of the mishmar that are working in that week. So the Gemara explains, what does this mean here? What does the Braisa mean when it says that this kain was old or weak? What does it
mean?
He's choosing which kain he wants to give it to. He's the one that's appointing. He can decide because he himself is a kain and he could bring the carbon himself. So therefore, he has the right to appoint a shliach and choose whichever kain he wants to give it to.
Even that in the Mishnah.
Okay, one second. Let's see what the Gemara says. So the Gemara explains what's this case over here. The kain that's old or sick. Hey Chidami, what's the case here? If this is a kain that's old and sick, but he could do the aveda himself, even though he's old and sick. So avidasa va'ira nami tehavi didei. So if so, the meat of the animal and the hide of the animal should also belong to him. Now didei over here means to the kain that he chose that should do the aveda. It says here that this kain was old and sick, and therefore he didn't want to do the aveda himself. He chose another kain to do it. But if he could do the aveda himself, when he appoints another kain to do it, that kain is his shliach. So therefore, just like you could appoint him to do the aveda for you, so then you could also designate him that it belongs to him. That this kain that's doing the aveda should get the meat and should get also the hide of the animal. Why is it saying that the meat and the hide goes to all the people of the mishmar? On the other hand, if this kain is old and sick and he can't even do the aveda either, Then shliach hechi mashvi. Why is it saying that he could choose a kohen and say that you're the one that should do the avodah for me? If he can't do the avodah himself, he can't appoint a kohen. The halacha regarding shlichus always is if there's something that you can't do yourself, you can't appoint someone in your place to do it. So why is it saying that he could choose a kohen to give it to? Rav Papa answers, this kohen that's a zaken a means sheyachal la'asais la'idei atchak. He could do the avodah. It's going to be difficult for him, but he can do it. So avodah d'chiyavet la'idei atchak avodah. Doing the avodah, even though it would be difficult for him, but it's an avodah. So therefore, b'payil, it is possible for him to do the avodah. So therefore, mashvi shliach. He could appoint a shliach. He can choose which kohen he wants to do it for him. On the other hand, though, achile, when it comes to eating, he's old and sick, and it's difficult for him to eat all this meat. When a person eats something which is very difficult for him, this is called achila gasa. It's something that you're eating, which you're stuffing yourself, and you can't eat it. It's not even. It doesn't even have the shame achila. Taisus brings this is brought also b'negei to Yom Kippur. If a person eats a Yom Kippur something that is totally disgusting to him, and he can't put it into his mouth, and he eats it anyways, it's not even called eating on Yom Kippur. Over here as well, if this person is so sick that it's hard for him to eat, that's not called an achila. Achila gasa lav klumu. It's nothing. When it comes to the eating of the carbon, so this kohen that he appointed to bring the carbon in his place, that shlichus is not going to also be for the achila, that this kohen will eat also instead of him. So therefore, when it comes to the eating of the meat and the hide of the animal, that will belong to other kohenim, or the kohenim of the mishmar. Rav Sheshes, a similar halacha related to this Indian, Rav Sheshes said, Im haya kohen tamei, if there was a kohen of the mishmar that he was tamei, the carbon sibur, and he has to bring a carbon sibur. So this kohen that is tamei, and he has to bring a carbon sibur. So this kohen is allowed to bring a carbon sibur. Regarding a carbon sibur, we push off tumah, and he's allowed to bring this carbon. So therefore, this kohen, if he wants, he could appoint someone else. He can give over the carbon to whichever kohen he wants to bring this. But the eating of this animal, though, because he's tamei, if you're tamei, you can't eat. So therefore, the eating of this carbon will belong to the people of the mishmar. So the Gemara over here also tries to understand what was Rav Sheshes saying. Hey chidami, what is the case over here? If there are other people in the mishmar here that are kohenim that are tahir, so then why tamei mi matzah avdi? Someone that's tamei, while there's other people that are tahirim, is he allowed to bring the carbon? So the explanation of this question over here is, even though yes, there is a halacha that by a carbon sibur you could bring the carbon even if you tamei, but there's actually a discussion about this in the Gemara whether you say tuma hutra b'tzibur or tuma duchuya b'tzibur. Tuma duchuya b'tzibur means that if there's no choice, if all kohenim are tamei, so then even if you're tamei, you can bring the carbon sibur. But if there is another kohen that's available that's tired, you have to allow the kohen that's tired to bring it. So over here in this case, if the other kohenim of the mishmar are tired, and that's what it seems like because it's saying that he's giving it over to other kohenim over here. So then what does it mean over here? That what does it say over here? That he gives it over to them to eat. So if he's giving it them to eat, so then it means that they're not tamei. So why is he doing the aveda? They should be doing the aveda. If there are no other kohenim, everybody is tamei in the entire mishmar here, or maybe bichlal from the kohenim, they're all tamei. So why does it say that who's going to be eating this carbon? The kohenim of the mishmar, but they're all tamei. They can't eat. So Rav explained what Rav Sheshes was talking about is the case over here is that he's a carbon. He's a kohen that is which is tamei, but he's not a balmum. The other kohenim in the mishmar are bali mumin. So therefore, he's the only one that can bring the carbon because by a carbon sibor, even if you're tamei, you can bring the carbon. But the other kohenim in the mishmar, which are bali mumin, a bal mum, you have a blemish, you can't bring the carbon. So he brings the carbon, but a kohen of bal mum could eat the carbon. So therefore, they're going to eat the carbon while he brings the carbon. Ravashi said another similar halacha, imhaya, or related to this subject, imhaya kohen gadol einin. If a kohen gadol was an einin is on the day when a close relative passes away, on that day itself, so you're called an einan. So the kohen gadol, that's an einan, can still serve in the Beis HaMikdash, but he can't eat from the karbanis. So therefore, just like he could do the aveda himself, if he doesn't want to do the aveda, he has though the right to appoint whichever kain he wants to do the aveda. Since he could do it himself, he could appoint whoever he wants. But the eating of the carbon and the hide as well will go to the people of the mishmar because he can't eat himself. A aynan is not allowed to eat, so therefore the kain of the mishmar will eat. In fact, the Gemara, what was the chiddush of what Rav Ashi said? Tanina, this is something that it says clearly in a braisa. Kohen Gadol makriv aynan. A Kohen Gadol could bring the carbon as an aynan himself, but ve'eno eichel. He's not allowed to eat from it. And ve'eno chelek lechel le'erev. Even in the evening, he also can't eat from it. This is learned out from what it says there by Aaron, Akayin, after Nadav and Avihu passed away. So over there the pasuk says that only the chatas that was brought as a kotche shah, a hayra shah, that Moshe Rabbeinu said he was allowed to eat even as an aynan. But usually a regular carbon kotche daitis, a regular carbon Akayin, even a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to eat as an aynan. And then even the aynan at night, by day you're aynan min atayra. That night he's only an aynan midrabanan, but still he's not allowed to eat. So here, this Braisa says clearly this halacha regarding the Kohen Gadol that he could be makri of the carbon, but he can't eat it. So what's Rav Ashi coming to add to this? Says the Gemara Salkadai Tchamina, because I would think to say ki chas rachman ale the Kohen Gadol lekruvihu. When does the Torah have rachmanis, meaning the Torah allows the Kohen Gadol to remain and serve, and he doesn't have to leave? That's if he wants to do it himself. Aval l'shavi shliach, but if he's not doing it himself and he wants to appoint a shliach, then loy matzi mashvi. He can't appoint a shliach. If he's not going to do it himself, he has no ability to appoint a shliach. Kamash Mulan. That's what Rav Ashi said, that no, besides the fact that he can do it himself, he can even appoint a shliach as well to bring the carbon, just like he could. Okay, now we come back to the subject of Gezel Hager. Zakta Elige Mishneh, Hagoizel es Hager, person steals from a ger. V'nish baloi, and he swore to him falsely that he did not steal, and then umeis, this ger dies, and now the person was made that he swore falsely. And in such a case, like by every gzela, if you stole and swore falsely and admitted, so you have to pay the keren, and then a fifth, a chaimish, and a asham, a carbon. So over here, who does he pay this to? This ger has no yarsham. No, he had no children. You pay the principal, the fifth, to the kayanim. And then the asham, you have to bring a carbon asham as well, the mizbeach. Shanem, as the pasuk says, v'mein le'ish goyel, if a person doesn't have a relative, lahashav ha'asham elov, to give back the money to him, ha'asham ha'mushav l'Hashem la'kayin, so this goes to the kayin, and this is muvad ela kipurim ha'shi chapeh bayalav, besides the carbon that he has to bring. What happens if the case was ha'ya mailes ha'kesef es ha'asham, this person, this ganev, was bringing the carbon, or was bringing the money, and he was bringing the carbon to Yerushalayim, to the kayinim. Umeis, on his way, this person dies. So now the children of this gazlan, do they have to now deliver and bring this money to the kainim? Says the Mishnah, no. Hakesef yinasan labanov. The children can keep this money. So now she explains the reason is because really this person that stole from the ger, after the ger dies, he can just yarshin this money from the ger. The money of a ger after he dies is hefker. And this person that stole from the ger could just keep it now for himself. Elamai, as long as this gazlan is alive, for the kapara, if he wants to have a kapara, the Torah says he has to give it to the kainim. But if the gazlan dies, then there's no of a kapara anymore. The children don't need a kapara, so they keep the money for themselves. The ha'asham, the carbon asham, doesn't have to be brought as a kapara either anymore. So here this is a case of a carbon asham where the owner dies. Yirach, yistav, you leave the animal to just graze until it gets a mum, and then v'yimacher, you sell it, v'yiplu damav l'nedava. And then you take that money, and it comes in a dava, a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, and you bring karbanis from it. Now, nosan hakesef lanche mishmar. If this person, this gazlan, already gave the money that he stole from this ger, he gave it already to the kayanim of the mishmar umeis, and then he died before he had a chance to bring any carbon asham to have the full kapara. So you may think that because he died before he brought the carbon asham, so this is like an incomplete thing here, so maybe you should take back the money. The children maybe should come and take back the money from the Kayanim. No, so the Mishnah says, once the money was given to the Kayanim, you can't take back the money. Shanema, Pasuk says regarding this case, V'ish, Ashiyitin la'kayin, lo yiyeh. Once you give it to the Kayan, it remains by the Kayan, even though the person died before he brought the carbon asham. Okay, now the next case of the Mishnah is going to discuss the order. You have to give the keren, the chaimish, to the kayanim, and you also have to bring a carbon asham. What's the order? What's first, the asham or the money? So here in the mishmaris of the Beis Hamikdash, here the Gemara is going to bring this based on the names of the different mishmaris that were in the Beis Hamikdash. The first mishmar in the Beis Hamikdash, the name was Yehoyariv, and the second mishmar in the Beis Hamikdash, the name was Yedaya. So what happens if Nasan HaKesev L'Yoyadev? First, he paid the money to the earlier Mishmar, which is Yoyadev. And then V'asham, afterwards, he brought the carbon Asham with the next Mishmar, which is Yedaya. So then Yatza is Yaitza. But if it was in the reverse, Asham L'Yoyadev. First, he brought the carbon Asham to the first Mishmar, which is Yoyadev. And then V'Kesef L'Yedaya. Then he brought the money that he has to pay to the next Mishmar, which is Yedaya. So he brought it in the wrong order, the carbon Asham first. Now, im kayam asham, if that carbon asham that he gave over to the first mishmar, they didn't actually bring the carbon yet. The carbon is still, the animal is still here. So yakrivu b'nei yedaya. We take it away from the mishmar of Yoyadev, and we give it over to the next mishmar of Yedaya. Even though the mishmar of Yoyadev could say, we already got this carbon asham, we want to bring it, and then they're going to have the benefits of it. They want to have the meat or the hide. No, they're not supposed to take it before the money was paid. So we take it away from them and we give it to the next mishmar. V'imloi, if this animal that was given to Yoyadev is not alive anymore, the carbon was brought before the money was paid, yachsev v'yavi asham acher. You're going to have to bring a second carbon asham after you first pay the money to the kainim. Because shamei v'gzeiloi acheloi hevi ashamai. If you first bring and pay the money before the carbon asham is brought, yatzah, then you yatzah. But hevi ashamai acheloi hevi gzeiloi. If you first are makriv the carbon before you pay the money, lo yatzah, you're not yatzah. Nasan esa keren. You pay the kainim the keren, the principle of what you stole. V'lei nasan esa chaimish. You didn't yet pay the fifth. Ein chaimish ma'akev. The fifth, you didn't pay yet the fifth. That's not ma'akev. You can bring already the carbon asham, and the kapara will take effect. Tana Rabbana, we learned Nabraisa Asham in the Torah when it says the lashon that Asham. What's the lashon in the pasuk? V'meilish goyel hashiv ha'asham elo. You have to give back the asham. What's this asham? Zek keren. Asham maybe it doesn't refer to the carbon. It refers to the actual money that you stole that you have to give now to the kainim. And then when it says the term hamushav, which you return, it's an extra word, zechaimish. That means the added fifth that you have to give. Oh yeah, he says the Braisa. Maybe I should say the opposite. Elo asham ze ayil. Maybe I should say that when it says asham, the asham, like usually, asham in the Torah usually means a carbon. Maybe asham means to the ram that you bring as a carbon. And then later when it says mushav, maybe that refers to the money. The Gemara explains, Lamai nafkimina. What difference would there be how we translate the word asham or mushav? Either way, you see in the pasuk both. That you have to bring a carbon and you have to pay the money. What difference does it make whether the word asham means the money or the word asham means the carbon? Says the Gemara, there's a big difference how you refer to the money. Because lafukim ederave, if you would say that when it says in the Torah asham, it means the carbon, it doesn't mean the money, then this would be going against what Rava said. The Omar Rava said, Gezel ager, this money that you have to return from the ger now to the kainim, shechzira balayla, if you gave it back to the kain at nighttime, lo yotza, you're not yotza, or echzira lachatzan lo yotza. If you give back half of the money, also not yotza. And why not? Because my time at Rava said asham kari rachmana. When the Torah says return the money, it gives it the title as a carbon asham. It says halacha like a carbon. So therefore, it's important to know, how do we know over here that the asham actually means the money in order to see the source for Rava's halacha? That it has a halacha like a carbon, that you have to give it in daytime and you have to give it in full, not halfway. So the Gemara explains, Keshehu Aimer, Mulvad, Eila Kipurim, later on, the pasuk says, this is the asham that you're giving, is besides the Eila Kipurim, have Aima asham zakeren. So now you know that the asham must be the money, because afterwards it talks about the carbon. Tanya Yidach, another Braisa talks about the meaning of this pasuk. Asham zekere. When it says asham, refers to the principle of the money you stole. Hamushav zachaimish. Hamushav refers to the added fifth. Maybe I should say the opposite. Asham zachaimish. That the asham is the fifth, and only the word mushav means the keren. And lamay nafkemina. What difference would there be how you translate the words in the pasuk over here? Lafukim emasnisim. I would say that this would exclude the halacha of what it said in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah it said, once you pay the principal, even if you didn't pay the fifth, the fifth does not hold back the kapara. So if I would say that the word asham means keren, so then asham means that that's what's relevant, that's what's needed over here for the kapara. So therefore we need to know what's the source that asham means the keren. So adarabe chaimish ma'akiv. Maybe I should say the opposite. If I say the word asham, that is, means the chaimish, maybe I would say that no, it's dafka the fifth that holds back the kapara, not the principle. And when the pasuk says that you give back the asham bereisha, bereisha means what you give, the main money that you give back, and then it says v'chamishisai havayim asham zakeren. So from the language in the pasuk there, we see that ashamai refers to the keren, and then the chamishis, that's the fifth. Tanya, another brayse we learned about this pasuk here. Osham zakeren. The osham refers to the principle of the money. Hamushav zachaimish. Then when it says the word mushav, that means the added fifth. Ubegezel hager akasam medaber. What is this pasuk talking about? It's talking about exela when you stole from a ger. Now, maybe I should interpret this pasuk totally different. Ela hamushav. Maybe I should say it's not talking about gzela. It's talking about geneva. Geneva is not like a gzela is like an armed robbery, an open robbery, and geneva is when a person is stealing in a hidden way. Right, Geneva has a different halacha. Maybe I should say that over here, when it says that you give back to Asham, which is the principle, and then Hamushav, which is something additional, maybe it's a kefil. Or Geneva is like a kosim. Maybe it's not even talking about a case where you pay chaimish. Maybe it's talking about a Geneva where you pay double, you pay kefil. So the Gemara says no. From the context of the pasuk later, that you see this is not what it's talking about. It says you first you pay the principal, and then you pay the fifth. We're talking about the keren that's being paid, just keren, without kefil. And then we're adding to that kefil, we're adding to that keren that is without the kefil, we're adding a fifth. So therefore we know that we're not talking about a case where you're paying double for geneva. Gufa, going back to the halacha mentioned before, Amar Rava said, Gezla ger shachzira balayla. The ger, you stole money from the ger, you return it to the kainim at night time, lo yatza. It's like a carbon. You can't bring a carbon at night, you can't return it at night. Achziru chatzah, you gave half of it, lo yatza, also not yetza, like a carbon. My time, Asham Kari Rachmana, the Torah says it's like a carbon Asham that has to be during the day and has to be in full. Amar Rava said, Gezla ger she'im by shava pruta. A gazla ger that you're returning, who do you return this to? You return it to the kainim of that mishmar that's serving in the time that you're returning it. Now, there's a mishmar of the kainim. Let's say in this mishmar of the kainim, there's 50 kainim. And the money that you stole, you have to return out to these kainim. But now you have to return the money to which kainim? You have to return it to all the kainim of the mishmar. So what's if it's a case, she'em b'shava pruta l'chol kainim v'kainim? If you're going to return the money and you distribute the money amongst all these kainim, each kainim is going to end up getting an amount, a percent, which is less even than a shava pruta. Less than the minimum amount of money. You're not going to be yaitza. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to add money from your own in order that it should be at least a value, that each kain should get at least a shava pruta. My time with the chsiva asham mushav. This is the asham. This is the money that you return. Ache ashava l'chol kain v'kain. There should be something, at least the minimum of a shava pruta that you're returning for every single kain. How many kain? It could be a lot, actually. I give the example of 50, but there could be a lot more. It could be many, many kainim. So this person may end up having to add a lot of money. Rava asked the shaila based on this. So let's say the earlier mishma, as we saw before in the Mishnah, Yayarev was the first mishma. What's if the first mishma? So over there are so many kainim in this mishma that there won't be a shava pruta enough to give from what you stole for each one of them. But the mishmeres yedaya, the next mishmer is a smaller mishmer, and there, if you're going to pay back the money, so there will be enough of a shava pruta for each one of them. Mahu, what's the halacha? Should you give it to the next mishmer, where there'll be enough for each one of them? So the Gemara explains when this ibaya is relevant. Hey chidami, what's the case here? If it's now the time when this mishmer of yedaya is serving, and you're paying it to this mishmar of Yedaya, and there'll be enough of a shava pruta for each kayin. So then what's the problem? What's the ibaya here? Ha'ispe. Over here, there's enough of a shava pruta for each one of them. Why shouldn't this be good? Says the Gemara, this is not needed. The place where the question comes up over here is in the following case. The Yaveh Yedaya, he's giving back the money to the kainim that are in the mishmar of Yedaya, the mishmar to the Yayarav, when it's still the week of the mishmar of Yayarav that's serving. So what's the halacha here? It's not the mishmar that's serving right now. You're supposed to give back the money to the mishmar that's serving now, and you're giving it to the later mishmar. Why? Because there's less kainim there. So do we say since this is not the mishmar that's serving in this week, so what you return to a later mishmar, it's not their time, so it's not worth anything. Or maybe I say like this. Since I see that the mishmar of Yayarev has too many kainim, and the amount of money you have, they're not going to get a shava prut to each one of them from what you have to give. So we see that this is really destined for the next mishmar. So if you're giving it even earlier, while the previous mishmar is serving, but you're giving it them even before, we know that this is really meant for the next mishmar, and therefore what you gave them is good. Taiku, this remains unresolved. Rav had another shaila about this. Kayanim that receive a payment from a Gezel Ager. Let's say there's one group of Kayanim that got a payment. There's other groups of Kayanim that got a payment from a different person that stole. Could they exchange this money one with another? That I'll take from mine, you give me from yours. You'll take from mine, that is, and I'll take from yours. Are they allowed to switch it? Or not? Maybe they can't. Why should they not allow to switch this money? So the Gemara says like this: Mi amrinon, do I say Asham Karya Rachmana? As we saw before, the Torah refers to this payment like mamash, like a carbon, like a asham, and therefore ma asham. Just like when it comes to the meat, the portion of the animal, of the carbon asham that the kayanim eat, ein chalkim asham keneged asham. If there's two carbonis of asham that different kayanim are bringing, one carbon can't say to the other, "You give me your meat, I'll give you my meat." So Av Gezel Hager, so too by the Gezel of Hager, Ein Chalkin Gezel Hager, Kanag Gezel Hager. The Kainim can't switch the payment of this money. Or maybe we could say, even though it's called an Asham in the Torah and it's compared, but nevertheless, Gezel Hager Mamainahu. It is money. So if it's money, money is something that this money and that money is the same thing, and over here you can switch it. Hada Pashta, after he asked Rav asked the Shaila, he resolved it and said, Asham Karya Rachmane. The Torah calls it an Asham, and therefore you can't switch this money with another kind's money, even of the Gezel Ager. He just learned that Rav said this clearly. Omar Rav, Kayanim and Chalkin Gezel Ager, Kaneg Gezel Ager. Kayanim, they each received the payment of Ager, they can't switch this with one another. My time, Asham Karya Rachmane. The Torah referred to it as an Asham. Baya Rav had another Shaila. Kayanim, the Gezel Ager. The Kayanim that receive this payment from this Gezel Ager, how do we define this? What kind of a status does this have? Yarshim Havu? Are they like inheriting now this money from this Ger? Right, they're inheriting it through this person that stole from the Ger and now ends up by the Kayanim. So they're basically like Yarshim of this Ger. Or it's like considered to be that they received a gift. Says the Gemara, what's the relevance of this Shaila? So the relevance would be as follows. Shagazal chametz, a person stole chametz from a ger. Va'ava olav Pesach, and now it passed through Pesach. And now, what's the story with this chametz after Pesach? It's asabana. It really has no value at all. So now, could you give back this chametz as is that you stole from the ger to the kainim? If you're going to say that we define these kainim that received the payment from the person that stole from the ger, he's just like a yairish. So haida yarsi, mairis. So this is what you got from the ger, and now it's taka asaba na after Pesach, and this is what they yarshin, and this is what you give. But if you're going to say that when the Torah says you have to pay to the Kainim, what the Torah is saying is this is a gift that you have to give to the Kainim. So if you define it as a gift, so then have a matane, kama rachmana the nesav luhu. So the Torah is saying you have to give something which has value, a gift. If this is the chametz after it's asaba nana after Pesach, so you're not giving anything. It's not. You can't define it as a gift. The after ba'almuhu, it just has the value like dust. So now you're not going to be able to give this chametz. You have to give them something value. You have to give money. That's the shaila. This is one version of the sibaya Rava. Rav Zira baya hachi. Rav Zira had the sibaya differently. He said, "Afilim timtzaloima mekable matana havu." Even if you're going to say that the Torah defines this that you have to pay the gezel ager to the kainim, that it's a gift. The ibaya before regarding this chametz that's now asaba no, that's not going to be a shaila whether you can give it to the kainim. Dahi matana amar achmanu the leisav lahu. Even though it really has no value now, but this is what the Torah said you should give. The Torah says give what you stole from the ger to the kainim. So this is what the gift is. If in this case this gift has no value, too bad. That's exactly what you give to the kainim. So it doesn't matter. Even if you define it as a gift, you still give this chametz that has no value to the kainim. That's not the ibaya. Elo, he says, the ibaya that Rava asked before, do we define it as a matane or as a yerusha? The relevance of that will be different. Can we buy along? What's the ibaya over here regarding this that you have to give this gezel ager to the kayin? Kagain shenafuloi esa behemis begezel ager. What happens if the payment to the kainim that this person, what did he steal from this ger? He stole 10 animals of one herd, and now he's giving it to the kain. So what's going to be the halacha over here? In such a case, shenaf loy esa behemis begezel ager. The kayin got now 10 behemis that was paid to him from gezel ager. Usually there's a halacha of ma'aser behemah when you have 10 animals that are all coming together to you. So would you have to give ma'aser behemah for this or not? Now this will depend if it's defined as a yerusha or as a gift. Why? Maybe you don't have to give, and what does this depend on? Yarshim havu, do I say that the Kohen is inheriting this? He's inheriting this from the Ger through the person that stole it that has to pay it to him now. And in such a case, you actually do have to give Maisa Behema from this. Because the Amar, the master, has said, Konu betfisas habayis, if you, in the home, after a father passes away, and now you have the inheritance, these 10 animals that you yashin together, chayavin, you have to give Maisa Behema from this. Oidil, or maybe not, mekable matanis havu. Maybe the kind that receives these 10 animals, it's like receiving a gift. And the halacha is when you receive a gift, 10 animals together, you don't have to give Maisa Behema from this. And this is learned from a pasuk in the Masechta Bechayris. Etnan, the Mishnah says, Halekeyach, a person that acquires 10 animals, or Vanitin Leib Matan, he gets it as a gift, Patami Maisa Behema, he doesn't have to give any Maisa Behema. This is the shaila over here regarding the Gezel Hager, whether the kind that got 10 animals, does he have to give Maisa Behema from this? So the Gemara here is going to bring a lengthy braise that goes through all the different kinds of matanis that a kohen gets. This is actually in Parshas Kairach. There's a total of 24 different kinds of matanis that a kohen gets, and one of those matanis is gezel hager, and the braise here defines that gezel hager as a matana. Okay, but let's hear here the whole list. Toshama, so we learned in the braise as follows: Esrem va'arba matanis kohune nitnu la'aron u'levanov. There are 24 different gifts that the Torah grants to Aaron and his descendants. V'kula nitnu b'klal prata klal. And they're all written in the Torah as a klal prata klal. Rashi brings the way it's written in the Torah. It says there, V'zei yiluchom mekadosh hakadoshim. That's a klal. And then afterwards it says, mina eish. It says here, detail. And then afterwards it says again, v'chol trumas hakochim. It's written as a klal prata klal. And then also, ubris melach. There's a bond that the Eibishter made, just like there's a bris that you have to bring the salt by every carbon. There's the Eibishter, or the bris that the Eibishter made with the melach. The Eibishter made the same bris that you have to give all of these matanis to the kainim. Now, what we learn from this is kol mekaimon, anyone that fulfills and gives these gifts to the kainim, kilu mekaim klala prata klal. It's as if you fulfilled klala prata klal, which means it's as if you fulfilled the entire Torah, which is given to be darshaned through klala prata klal. That's how Rashi teaches this. And ubris melach, and also this bris of the melach goes on you as well, that is doing this mitzvah of giving all these matanas to the kainim. If you're over on this and you don't give these gifts to the kainim, you're being over on the Torah, which is darshan, that's a klal prata klal, ubris melach, and you're over on this covenant that the Eibishter said that it should be given to the kainim. Now ve'elu hein, these are the 24 gifts for the kainim. Eser b'mikdosh. 10 of them, they could only eat and have in the Beis HaMikdash itself, in the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash, V'dalad b'Yerushalayim, 4 of them in the whole city of Yerushalayim, and V'eser b'Gvulim, and another 10 of them anywhere in the borders of Eretz Yisrael. And the Mishnah, what are they? The Braisa goes through all of this. Eser b'Mikdash, 10 of them are in the Beis HaMikdash, Chatas b'Heimeh, a carbon chatas, the meat of this animal that's given to the kainim, v'chatas ha'oif, and also from the chatas ha'oif that the kain gets as well. And v'osham vadai, there are different karbonis that are called an osham vadai. There are 5 different types, Rashi says. And v'osham tali, then there's an osham tali where a person brings if he has a suffix, if he had chaylev or not. These are all meat from this carbon goes to the kainim. And then v'zivchei shalmi tzibur, the carbon shlamim that belongs to the tzibur, that's brought on Shavuos, together with the shtei alechem. Also the kainim get the meat from this. V'loig shemesh al mitzayre, there's the log of shemen, of oil that's used to put on the ears and it's on the fingers of the mitzayre. So the leftovers of that go to the kain. Umeiser ha'emer, the leftovers of the carbon oimer that's brought on the second day of Pesach. So there's the kaimitz that's brought on the mizbeach, but then the rest the kain gets. Shtei alechem, the shtei alechem that's brought on Shavuos also goes to the kain to eat. And v'lechem apanim, the lechem apanim every week the kain eat from it. And the shiyarim minachas, the leftovers of all carbon minachas in the Beis HaMikdash, where the kaimitz is brought in the mizbeach and the rest the kain eat. Those are all the 10 that are in the Beis HaMikdash. V'arba b'Yerushalayim, then there are 4 that the kain can eat in Yerushalayim. Ha'b'chayra, the b'chayr that of the animals that has to be given to the kain eats in Yerushalayim. V'abikurim, the bikurim brought to the kain is eaten in Yerushalayim. V'hamuram and ha'taida, there's chaza and shaik from a carbon taida that's given to the kain that he can eat in Yerushalayim. V'ayel nazir, there's the ram of a nazir where there is a zraya that is given to the kain and he has to cook it and he eats it together with the breads that are eaten in Yerushalayim. And v'ayis kachim, the hides of the animals of the kachim is for the kain to use in Yerushalayim. Then v'asara b'gvulim, there's another 10 gifts to the kain that are given for the kain to use all over in Eretz Yisrael. Truma, the Truma Gedaila, the Truma that you give to the Kayin, Trumas Meiser, when a Levi gets Meiser, a tenth of that he has to give to the Kayin. And the Chala that you separate of the dough to the Kayin. Vereishis Hagei is the first shearing of the wool of the sheep that you give to the Kayin. V'hamatonis, there's other matonis as well that you give. What is this referring to? Do you have over there? The what? Oh, the Israel L'chaim V'keva, also from other karbonis as well. Is that what, yeah, from the animals, from Bechlal, not from karbonis, Bechlal. There's certain sections of the animal that you give to the kain, right? That the kain can eat wherever he is in Eretz Yisrael. Pidyon Aben, the 5 slime of Pidyon Aben for the kain, a Pidyon Petach Chamayr, and also redeeming the Chamayr, and Zdei Achuzah. Zdei Achuzah, this is a property of inheritance that you were makdish and someone else redeemed it. When Yovel comes, that goes to the kainim. Zdei Charamim, a sadat that a person was machrim, it's a certain kind of hektish, it goes to the kainim. And Gezel Ager, and here, the last one of this entire list, which is called a matane, is Gezel Ager, and then you have to pay it to the kainim. The Kakari Mies Matane. So we see over here that the Braisa refers to Gezel Ager amongst the 24 matanes, so it's called a matane. Shmamina Mekavle Matanes Havo. So we see that this is not an inheritance. The Gezel Ager you pay is called a matane. Shmamina, this is a raya from this Braisa.